Thank you so much, Professor Paranspe. Your insightful speech on how historical India's strategic culture evolved through various stages and how we are now becoming a demanding strategic culture was really helpful for us. Moving on to the next segment, we'll now carry out the inaugural section of Rajnitik 2024. I request Bhushan Kokle sir to please inaugurate Rajnitik 2024. Rajnitik is the annual academic students magazine made by the students of Department of Political Science.
This is our magazine.
Please give a huge round of applause. Always high.
Always high, yes. That's the spirit.
Now we are starting with the panel discussion. I request volunteers of the stage committee to please come on the stage to make the required changes. I also request Shivani Patil to introduce Air Marshal Bhushan Gokhale sir.
It is my honor to introduce Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur sir. Sir was commissioned on 29 December 1976 with the President's Sword of Honor and retired on 31st May 2013 after 36 years of distinguished service. He is an experimental test pilot from French Test Pilot School, a graduate of the Air Command and Staff College USA, and a postgraduate in Defense and Strategic Studies from Madras University. Sir was the contingent cadre of the first IAF United Nations mission in Sudan and has been head of training at Defense Services Staff College, Wellington. As Assistant Chief of Air Staff, Sir was the operational head of transport and helicopter operations of the Indian Air Force for 2.5 years. His last assignment was as Assistant Chief of Integrated Defense Staff in charge of prospective planning and force structure of the services. On retirement in May 2013, Sir joined the Center for Air Power Studies, New Delhi, where he was Additional Director General. Sir has lectured at NDC military academies and war colleges in India and abroad, and continues to dabble in his core interest, air power, geopolitics, military leadership, and strategic affairs, by researching and writing in leading national newspapers. Without any further delay, let's welcome our guest, Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur sir.
हाँ चालेल. Jai Hind, boys and girls. It's good to be here, and thank you, SP College, especially Dr. Arte, for calling me in here. It's so good to come and speak to young people because you feel young yourself. All right? It's been, as Professor Paranjpe said, that he was sitting outside the hall and got caught. We, Maslekar self and Evasham locally, we've done our stint of action in NDA and similar things. Okay, so we've outgrown that, and to see you all once again, it's really good. It's good to be part of a panel where Air Marshal Gokhale, who was my boss in Air Headquarters, chairs it, and Air Commodore Maslekar, he and I spent time together in Leh, flying over the glacier, Siachen Glacier. A little more on that later if we have time. But the topic given to me is Indian Air Power. It's not Indian Air Force. There's a difference as we go along. Okay, Indian Air Power and national security. So what I will do is, I will talk of nuances of national security. Professor Paranjpe has done a tremendous canvas of what it all means. I'll go a little bit into nitty-gritties. Then I'll get on to air power in national security, followed by Indian air power in national security. There would be some repetition, but that is part of the flow that will happen. Okay, the question now is, what is security? Very simple. And I think the best way is, when I describe it, is the state, this is in the dictionary, the state of feeling happy and safe from danger and worry. Now you can put this in any context, any context. This simple definition explains कि national security क्या चीज़ है. आपको डर नहीं है, आप घबराए नहीं हैं, you have no worries, and you are happy and safe. That is what is security. And people thought about it long back, even before our independence. It was thought by our forefathers who framed our constitution in the Constituent Assembly. And the National Objectives Resolution of 1947, 22nd Jan, talked of freedom, justice, equality, minority protection, territorial integrity, right, and getting India in the rightful place in the community of nations. This is what our framers of the Constitution talked of. Freedom of what all? Here it is very important. Each word, you can do a PhD on that. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, faith, worship. You can worship any God. You can follow any faith. Vocation, you can do any job. And association and action. That is the type of freedom our forefathers thought of. Let's talk of justice. Social, economic and political. Okay, that is the justice we should have. Then it comes to equality of status, of opportunity, and before the law. Har aadmi, har aurat, har bachcha is same as far as the law is concerned. Okay? Then minority protection, territorial integrity, and the rightful community of nations. So now that's a vast canvas of national security. And I haven't even talked of air power. It'll come a little later. But let's see, does this constitute national security? Remember this guy? The police wala tha, correct? And something was happening across the borders, drugs and arms and ammunition, etc. So, does it constitute national security? Yes. What about this guy? You all recognize him. How's that George Wala fellow, is it? You were here. Part of national security? Correct? What about this guy? ये मोटरसाइकिल कौन सी है? बुलेट. ये एयरक्राफ्ट कौन सा है पीछे? Okay, it's Mirage 2000. If this is all security and constitutes national security, what about this? Part of national security? Yes? Water, food, social, that's the ambit when you're talking of national security. Alright. And this, you won't even, I think your parents were born during that time. Okay, 1984 or somewhere there. When Ravi Shastri got that Audi, the first time in Australia, after we won the World Cup, this was Champions Trophy. And what fervor there was when we saw this on TV. But there is something called the national feel-good factor. You all felt proud when we saw it, right? That euphoria that comes up. So that is also part of that. So now let's get back to business. This is what Chanakya said long back. There is some self-interest behind every friendship. There is no friendship. Sorry. This is a bitter truth. So what is the strategic field of India? Normally there is something called the national security strategy. Okay, which we don't have as yet. But as per the newspaper report, something is coming up. What does the government of India or the country feels should be our strategy? So there is what the Ministry of Defence publishes every year, an annual report. This is 2002-2003. See from where to where it talks of. Persian Gulf to Malacca in the east, Central Asian republics to Equator. Limited. 10 years later, it expands. Okay, so it talks of neighboring countries, regions of West, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Indian Ocean. Okay, so this we get an idea what is India interested in, because इस पे depend करता है कितना budget मिलेगा आर्मी नेवी एयर फोर्स को, हम लोग उससे क्या सामान खरीदेंगे, what will be our strategy, okay? Because these are our interests stated by the government. And then in 2018-19, वो further expand हुआ, and it became Indo-Pacific. So you can imagine from the west coast of America right up to Africa and further beyond. Okay, that's how our strategic field is right now. So now we come to what is air power. If that is the expanse, that is the canvas that we are dealing with. What is air power? A simple definition is the total ability of a nation to assert its will through the medium of air. Total ability. Okay. And when we are talking of air, there is space above that, and man is into space, we are into space. Let's talk aerospace. It's a continuum that is happening, air, and then it goes into space. So air power. A few words on characteristics and its limitations. It has got speed, when you talk of characteristics, okay? You understand that. Reach, long distance, it's responsive, it can act. You've heard of cold start doctrine, right? Cold start doctrine. But air power actually is freeze start. Literally from a peace status, it can launch missions very quickly. Okay, so it's very responsive. Flexibility. आप B-17 हेलीकॉप्टर में कैजुअलिटी ला सकते हैं, सामान ले जा सकते हैं, लोगों को इधर से उधर ले जा सकते हैं, आप उसमें रॉकेट्स लगा सकते हैं अटैक के लिए. So air power is very flexible. उसका एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको बाद में भी और दूंगा. Then comes mobility. You can move an element of air power from one place to another and start operating. Air power is mobile. लोहे गांव में, यहाँ पे पुणे में सुखोइस है हमारे पास. यहाँ से you can move 4 aircraft from here to Tezpur and start operating from Tezpur in a matter of hours. You can move that from here to Srinagar and start operating from Srinagar. Okay, so it is mobile. Air power जो है mobile है. And then fire power I don't have to talk about. You understand that. Limitation, technology dependent. Technology change हो रही है. Literally every minute. And air power जो है उस पर बहुत dependent है. अगर हम if we don't keep pace, then we are in big problems. If we don't keep pace with technology. It's costly. There is no doubt about it. देश तैयार होना चाहिए पैसे खर्च करने के लिए फॉर एयर पावर और वो आता है वो हमारे स्ट्रेटेजिक कल्चर से और हमारा स्ट्रेटेजिक जो एक्सपेंस है जो हम देख रहे हैं देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड इम्पर्मनेंस यू कांट हैव एयरक्राफ्ट ओवर वन प्लेस 24/7 365 days a year it's very costly but things are changing and I'll cover in the next slide collateral damage होता है unfortunately लड़ाई में जो सिविलियंस हैं जो फौजी नहीं है उन पे they get hurt and then it requires large infrastructure but some things have changed like for example impermanence अब now you can have UAVs and satellites looking at one place throughout if अगर देश के पास वो capability है और वो capability हमारे पास धीरे धीरे आ रही है then comes collateral damage वो भी कम हो गया है क्योंकि हमारे पास precision guided munition है आप देखते होंगे अपने टीवी में वो जो क्रॉस लगा हुआ है और बॉम्ब जा रहा है सडनली इट एक्सप्लोड्स दैट इज प्रिसिजन गाइडेड म्यूनिशन एंड नॉट नेसेसरी दैट यू रिक्वायर लार्ज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर यस some assets required but not all okay so what is the role of now that was air power what is the role of Indian Air Force there is something called Union War Book और सिंपल है to provide air defense to the Union of India. Period. अब इसमें जो भी चीजें आती हैं, जो भी पॉलिसीज बनानी है, they are all the responsibility of the IF. That is the role of the Indian Air Force. And how does the Air Force fulfill its role? हमारे पास 5 ऑपरेशनल कमांड है. वेस्टर्न एयर कमांड दिल्ली साउथ वेस्टर्न एयर कमांड गांधीनगर तिरुवनंतपुरम में सदर्न एयर कमांड सेंट्रल एयर कमांड इन इलाहाबाद और प्रयागराज एंड ईस्टर्न एयर कमांड शिलोंग और सपोर्ट करने के लिए 2 कमांड्स हैं ट्रेनिंग कमांड बेंगलोर में और मेंटेनेंस कमांड नागपुर में तो ये एयरफोर्स का स्ट्रक्चर है जिससे इट प्रोवाइड्स एयर डिफेंस ऑफ द नेशन एयर डिफेंस इज जस्ट नॉट डिफेंस इट्स पार्ट ऑफ ऑफेंस आई मीन देयर ऑफेंस इज आल्सो देयर defense is used in a wide expanse. Okay. So what is the basic functions? जो time available है उसमें details में हम नहीं जा सकते, but I'll just talk broadly. So basic functions is control of the air. जो environment है, जो air है, जो space है, you control it such that your air power is effective. And it can act the way you want, and you prevent the adversary or the enemy's air power to be effective. That is control of the air. And while doing that, what are you doing? You are supporting your people on the ground, your army on the ground, your navy on the ground. So you do that by keeping enemy's air force away and by attacking his ground targets. Okay? So ये ground attack. ये वेरी ब्रॉडली मैंने आपको समझाया है बेसिक 2 functions of any air power and what does the air force do Indian Air Force आर्मी के साथ नेवी के साथ तीनों सर्विसेज टुगेदर सिविल एजेंसीज के बारे में मैं बात करूंगा बट CPMF एंड द पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस उनके साथ ट्रेनिंग होती है एंड देयर आर SOPs to be used in requirement. But let's go back a little in history. Air power or Indian Air Power or Indian Air Force and nation building. ये श्रीनगर एयरफील्ड है 27 अक्टूबर 1947 26 अक्टूबर को इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ एक्सेशन साइन हुआ था 27 अक्टूबर को इंडियन एयरफोर्स के डकोटास थे वो 1 सिख हलाई को श्रीनगर ले गए वैली बच गई जो रेडर्स थे पाकिस्तानी रेडर्स वो बारामूला तक आ गए थे. They were pushed back, and the day was saved because of this airlift by the Air Force in 1947, 27th October. 7 महीने बाद we managed to open Leh, and this is the first landing on 24th May 1948. Same आप पीछे Lakota देख रहे हैं, and the Indian Army was brought in. Then there is this Punch airlift. We don't talk about it. लोगों को पता ही नहीं है. पर पुंछ जो है वो कट ऑफ था रेस्ट ऑफ द नेशंस, बिकॉज पाकिस्तानी रेडर्स ने उसको घेर लिया था. तो जो गैरिसन था वहां पे 1 कुमाऊं रेजिमेंट था, 1 कुमाऊं बटालियन था, एंड दैट वाज सपोर्टेड बाय डकोटास फ्लाइंग फ्रॉम जम्मू फॉर 1 फुल ईयर. 1 साल के बाद वो सीज टूटी और रोड कम्युनिकेशन हुआ. डकोटास लैंड करते थे 600 फीट रनवे पे रात को. 600 फीट कुछ नहीं है. Okay, try and see that tomorrow. And then there is something in the northeast special. Long back means say about 20 years back, roads come थी, and only way the army posts were supplied, the civil population was supplied, was through droppings and by helicopters. Droppings by fixed wing aircraft. You're seeing a Dakota here. Okay. ड्रॉप तो कर रहे थे, सामान ले जा रहे थे, बट देयर वाज वन मेजर इफेक्ट, साइकोलॉजिकल इफेक्ट, एंड दैट वाज द इमोशनल कनेक्ट. ओके, कि हिंदुस्तान आपको भूला नहीं है, आप बॉर्डर्स पे हैं, रोड नहीं है वगैरह वगैरह, बट देयर इज अ कनेक्ट, द नेशन केयर्स फॉर यू. सो देयर वाज एन इमोशनल कनेक्ट थ्रू एयर पावर. This is a factor. Now you may call it information warfare, psychological warfare, or psychological effect. Well, it is so. All right. Then एक तो civil power. ये bulldozer जो Mi-26 helicopter में ले जाया जा रहा है for making roads. Okay. Then flood reliefs. You see enough of these photographs nowadays. This is a Mi-17 over a roof pulling out people from floods. And ये हेलीकॉप्टर को recognize करते हैं. You know the Sarang aerobatic team. ये सारंग का ALH हेलीकॉप्टर है, ध्रुव. And they were doing a demonstration in Jodhpur when the Uttarakhand floods happened. So they were moved from Jodhpur from doing aerobatics to doing flood relief. That is flexibility of air power. Okay, the perfect example of flexibility of air power. So this is a Sarang helicopter doing this. Then there is movement of tigers under Project Tiger, and here is the tiger being moved out. All right, and then recently वो cheetahs आए हैं Africa से, they were also moved out by using Air Force helicopters. And then there is military diplomacy, about which Air Commander Mastekar will talk in details, so I will not cover this. But these are Sarang helicopters. Okay. And then humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So many examples because of the social media which is there now. But we have a diaspora. Hindustani सब जगह है दुनिया में. Okay. And you would have heard, if you remember, during COVID times, students यूक्रेन से चाइना से वापस लाए जा रहे हैं. यूक्रेन से the people were pulled out. Yemen, Libya, so many places recently. Okay, but the biggest evacuation, which is part of the Guinness Book of Records, was from Kuwait. That was in 1991 after the first Gulf War. 1,11,000 citizens were brought back, mostly by Air India. Remember, air power is not just Air Force. It's the civil airliners, civil assets included. So you can imagine what is Indian air power. Air India, Indigo, Vistara, वगैरह वगैरह. All of them put together. The Home Secretary of India can on a piece of paper sign and requisition aircraft wherever he wants. Okay, that's the law. So the biggest evacuation was from Kuwait in 1991. Now let's talk a little bit of offense. Okay, so these are all important roles that were done. It's an instrument of power projection. the Air Force or the air power. For that, a few words are necessary that you must understand. You all understand coercion. आप ये मत करो वरना मैं कुछ करूँगा, या आप कुछ कर रहे हो रुक जाओ. Okay, but and that's what it is. Use of threatened force, including employment of actual force to modulate an adversary's behavior. That is coercion. And there is a person called, there was a person, he's no more, Thomas Schelling. He's the expert, the father of deterrence theory. And he said, and please understand this, brute force cancels each other, but pain and grief do not. आपके पास most modern aircraft, tank, ships हो, और आपके adversary के पास तीर कमान हो, doesn't matter. Force cancels each other, but if his pain and grief threshold, when he starts feeling the pain, is higher than you, he is going to win the war. So that's what happened in Vietnam. The American superpower had to withdraw. That's what happened in Afghanistan. First the Russians withdrew, then now recently the Americans withdrew. And we had a similar situation in Sri Lanka. Peacekeeping force. So remember, when you are you as students of national security, please understand this. हथौड़े से हमेशा काम नहीं करता है. You have to cater for various things. Air power is very destructive, can be used very destructively, but it has to be used with common sense. Okay? And then the second sub-bullet. Perceptions are more important than actualities on ground. That is what is information warfare. That is what is psychological warfare. What is the general impression? Okay, so reality sometimes goes in the background. As students of security, please remember these two things. And one more word, deterrence is passive. उसमें ये है, don't do this, वरना मैं कुछ करूँगा. Compellence is, he has started doing something and you say stop, otherwise I will do something. The difference is, in deterrence, when you are doing this with the adversary, तो जो leadership है, उसकी नाक नहीं कटती है अगर वो काम नहीं करता है. With his followers. Okay, the public pressure. ये तो मैं तो करने नहीं वाला था, उसने तो कुछ नहीं किया है. You understand? Deterrence is passive. It's better to stop a situation from developing by deterring rather than by compelling. Compelling में क्या होता है? उसने कुछ action start कर दिया and you say stop. Now if he stops, the leadership loses face amongst the followers, amongst the general public. And since he doesn't want to lose face, he continues, or he may continue. Alright? Basically, war is all about coercion. Coercing the human mind. Okay, the human mind, the mind of the leadership of the adversary and mind of the population of the adversary, as also influencing the mind of your own population. लड़ाई में यही होता है. Okay, so Professor Parashve talked of myths and various those things. These are all part of this warfare strategy. Okay, so what does the Indian Air Force have amongst its strike assets? Just a few photographs. That's the Sukhoi 30 on top. There's the Rafale below you, on the slide. Then you've got the MiG-29, Jaguars, Mirages, Tejas. Okay, these are the strike assets that the Indian Air Force has. Very important. The combat enablers. Modern war is not, one Chinese Gen 5, J-20 or a Pakistani F-16 versus India's MiG-29 or Sukhoi. Modern war is now a war between systems. How good is your system versus his system? Yes, the cogs, the ingredients are also important, of course. The Sukhoi is important, the Mirage is important. But finally, it's a war between systems. How well is your system integrated, functioning together to get the result? Alright? इसमें combat enablers play a very important part in modern warfare. So you got the airborne warning and control system, AVACs on top, and a flight refueler aircraft below. Then there is transport support, or transport aircraft. Nothing can happen without them. Abhi jo last 3 years, what's happening up north in the eastern Ladakh area with the Chinese aggression at places, the amount of flying done by Air Force's transport aircraft is not even funny. Okay, the amount of army lifted tanks taken there, and Air Force assets taken there. So that's the C-17 on top. We have 11 C-17s, and the photo at the bottom is the C-130 landing at DBO, the highest Kacha airfield that we have got up there. And then we've got the IL-76. So our transport fleet is very strong. Then there is the rotary wing assets, or the helicopters. The Mi-17 is the bulk. And you would have seen it, I showed the photo earlier in that flood relief. वो Mi-17 था. ये चीता है ऊपर, और वो एक helipad है. We call it the matchbox helipad, matchbox size helipad. But these are the type of helipads on Siachen Glacier. And as I said, if there is time, I can cover it later. Apache attack helicopter on the left, and the Chinook heavy lift on the right, bottom. You would have heard this term, hybrid war. आजकल की लड़ाई जो चल रही है, no war, no peace. The adversaries, engaged us in hybrid war. Now, what is this hybrid war? Hybrid war is all this. Not necessary कि ये सभी हो एक साथ, but elements of that. So, conventional war, irregular, that is insurgency, social media, information war, terrorism, criminal activities. These are all hybrids. And air power comes in each of these activities. Okay, so hybrid war, air power is like this. And what should be the force structure in a hybrid war? It has to be hybrid itself. It has to be a whole of government approach where there is seamless integration of all partners. Okay, and you will understand it better when I say of all partners. So which are all these partners? ये partners ये हैं. Whole of government approach. This is the government. Of course, the whole slide is the government, but this is the civilian side, which is supplying food, water, shelter, delivering justice, looking after the economic aspects, political, medical, health. The army in green is present among the people. और जो maritime forces हैं वो भी किसी तरह से है. और air power ये dark blue है. It is providing them mobility, moving medical teams, elections, election parties. There are certain areas in our country वहाँ election नहीं हो सकते अगर Air Force के helicopter नहीं है. Let me tell you, maybe because of law and order in that place, or because of accessibility. Leh, Ladakh, northeast में, or in the Naxal areas. Okay, so air power is here giving support to everything else which is there. And when air power moves with the combat enablers now, you've got sorties, and this came out in the media also, going from Bhuj, striking Port Blair in the Andaman Sea there, and further ahead to Malacca and going back to Bhuj. About 8-hour sortie, 4 refuelings required, aerial refuelings required. और जब हम move करते हैं, mobility of air power, you move them to Kalaikonda, which is near Kharagpur, you get a particular radius of action. And you move them further east to Tezpur, you get a different radius of action. So that's how air power is moving. And इससे क्या होता है? You heard of this virtual nature. Air power has a virtual nature. आपको पता नहीं कहाँ से वो आएगा अटैक. आपको पता नहीं आपके सिर पे कौन सा UAV घूम रहा है, observing everything. Okay, and the results are being fed back. So it has a virtual nature, and that is what is the importance of air power even on this in the psychological realm. You cannot represent air power on a map, but only in circles of effect, which I just showed you. By giving you an example of the Sukhois, moving here and there. Then there is space. It is a strategic neighbor. If we neglect it, we had it. Plain and simple. In simple words. Okay, they go together, and जब हम strategic neighborhood की बात करते हैं, हमारा strategic neighborhood कहाँ क्या है? It is not only the Persian Gulf, Malacca, Tibet, China, and all that. It's also the space above us. It has to be protected, guided, and controlled. वो control of air मैंने बात करी थी. You have to have control of space also. Well, do we have limitations? Yes, we have. And it's important to understand this. One is our indigenous industry. Okay. It's important to have an indigenous industry which is happening. Remember one thing, in matters of foreign policy and matters of defense, irrespective of the political party in power, there is a continuation or a continuum of policy making and policy implementation. Emphasis may change, but generally speaking, it is a correct thing, an axiom to say so. Okay, so while we are developing our indigenous industry, it takes years, if not decades, to become self-sufficient. Decades, okay? Because it's not just making a hangar to make an aircraft. What about the tools, the jigs, the paperwork, the engineers, the technicians? So it's got to be, so your colleges, your IITs, people must be volunteering for aerospace engineering. All these things happen with this. So something called a strategic depth is missing, and which we make up with imports. It'll take some time, but it'll happen. Okay? And then a technological asymmetry, which Professor Pranjpe also mentioned earlier. He talked a little bit of that. But we have to be careful in matters of defense. It's built up with respect to China. We are trying to catch up, but it'll take us some time. और इसके बारे में तो आपने सुना ही होगा कि the Air Force squadron, the fighter squadron numbers are down to 32. They need to be built up to at least 42, but that will take time. The present chief has said that another 10 years we will reach 35. Okay, but that's still short of it. So there are ways and means of doing it through tactics, through strategy, through life extensions, and the Air Force has the grip on the handle. Okay. So next time you go to Leh, how many of you have been to Leh? Koi Leh gaya? Okay. By air or by road?
So by air, sir.
By air. So did you see when you were landing, if you looked up left on the hill, this is there. Touch the sky with glory.
Yes,
Huge steel planks. Okay, that's the Air Force motto. Touch the sky with glory. And on 8th of October, which is Air Force Day, Air Force Station Leh climbs up and paints this every year. The cheetah which is there, of the word IAF, that carries water and chuna to paint this. Alright. And this is a photograph of 1995, and I happen to be the CEO that time, and I was sitting inside there, in this aircraft. But that is the Air Force motto, touch the sky with glory. And here is a shot of the hills above Thais. I doubt whether you can see, you see the Indian flag colors there? Okay, no, this is not Photoshopped. Just guess what this is. So the pilot took a photograph and Lilia carried on. And when he saw that at home, back in his room, he saw this. So it was the patch, the national flag patch of the co-pilot on his shoulder, which was reflecting from the perspex of the cheetah helicopter. Okay, but that conveys a different meaning. And the meaning is, those hills are ours, वो हमारी territory है, वो हमारा land है, and we will do everything to protect it. Okay, that's how it goes. So each one of you, okay, I told you about the national security part. You don't have to be wearing a uniform. Each of you is a soldier in some form. आप चाहे IAS में, IPS में, you run your own factory, you run your own shop, you have a guidance agency or whatever. Okay, but remember, you must have a vision, an aim in life. Whatever you do, because each one of you is part of national security. You don't have to wear a uniform for that. Thank you very much. Jai.